for some perspectives on the situation in South Sudan. I'm joined in studio by Beny Gideon Mabor. He's a South Sudanese lawyer and human rights defender. Mr. Mabor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
We've seen the situation in South Sudan unfold. There's been a lot of blame game. Each side blames the other one. And the human rights of the South Sudanese people have been really severely violated. Now, where we are today, what would be your assessment of the situation? Are things just getting worse, or is there anything positive we can report on South Sudan?
Thank you very much, Vincent Makori, and the BOS for hosting me today at the Africa 54. The overview of the South Sudan situation is characterized by three things. One is the continued destruction of the social fabric, and secondly, second issue is the total near economic collapse, and third is political instability. And these three pictures are clearly showing themselves as a result of the ongoing armed conflict, and I believe they are not in the interest of anybody in South Sudan. And therefore, there's a need for the people of South Sudan, the political leadership, and the international community to bring to an end that suffering of the people.
And especially if you think about the South Sudanese themselves, because many times there's this call to the international community to do something. But when I look back at the excitement that there was when South Sudan got independence, everybody thought this is going to be like a model country. But it looks like South Sudan picked up the worst of what other African countries had developed over the years: nepotism, corruption, the negative forces of ethnicity. Is there any conversation in the country to kind of try to figure out the best way to move forward and abandon all those terrible practices that have bedeviled all African countries?
Definitely history shows that South Sudan came as a result of secession from the Sudan in an internationally witnessed referendum for the right of self-determination of the people of South Sudan. And when that country called South Sudan came into being on the 9th of July 2011, the country was undergoing the political transition, and an opportunity where a social contract is negotiated between the government and the citizen is through a constitutional making process. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. South Sudan underwent a political transition in 2011 in order to function as a state. Therefore, it has to have the constitution and the laws and an institution of governance. And so that opportunity was missed, and the people of South Sudan were not involved in the constitution making process in order to define the social contract between the citizen and the government, where these issues could have been possibly addressed. And unfortunately, we continue, and in 2013, 2 years down the line before general election, in order to have an elected government, the country again slipped into war. This is where we are now.
As a lawyer, have you seen any willingness, any commitment from the leadership on both sides to really get these things together, to have a constitutional order and a respect for law that will enable South Sudanese operate in an environment where they can exercise democracy, but also live in peace and security?
I would definitely say that, yes, there is a political willingness of the state to have a constitutional order, but unfortunately, South Sudan, being the youngest country at the time, is no longer younger now. I remember a number of countries are coming up in Europe and Kurdistan now. But South Sudan has immediately become the testing ground for geopolitical competition by the front-line states. And up to now, the situation that is going on in the country occurred as a result of South Sudanese being held hostage by the region because of the vested socio-economic and political interests of the leaders in the region. So there is willingness, but the issue of power struggle, the issue of internal wrangling over politics and power has actually blindfolded a number of our political leaders.
And we'll continue with this conversation. Definitely the issue of ethnicity, power, hunger, And corruption is a big thing in South Sudan as it is in other places. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Mabor. We'll continue with this kind of a conversation another time when we have the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Beny Gideon Mabor is a South Sudanese lawyer and a human rights defender.